I heard them laughing in the kitchen that day. Not loud laughter, just the kind that makes you realize you're not part of the joke. My daughter's voice drifted through the half-closed door, soft but sharp enough to reach me. "She'll forget anyway," she said. "Mom doesn't even remember what day it is most of the time." I sat still in my chair, the old wooden one that creaks even when you breathe too hard. My tea had gone cold. I didn't remember making it, but there it was, untouched. Like me, it's strange how silence can be heavier than words. I looked at the clock on the wall. It's ticking louder than their laughter. "I've had that clock since my wedding day, a gift from my husband, Henry," he said. "As long as this clock runs, we will never run out of time. But time, it runs differently when you're old. It doesn't race anymore. It lingers, almost taunting." That evening, I opened Facebook for the first time in weeks. My fingers trembled over the keyboard, the letters small and blurry. And there it was, my grandson, in his graduation gown, smiling beneath the words, "So proud of you, Ethan." I stared at the screen for a long while. Not a word from them, no message, no seat saved for me. Just that smiling boy, the one I used to rock to sleep, grown up and miles away. And in that quiet, I whispered to no one, "I was there for your first steps, Ethan, but not for your next." My name doesn't matter much anymore. These days, people just call me Grams. It used to sound warm, full of love, like the way Ethan said it when he was little, running down the hallway with his socks slipping off, yelling, "Grams, look what I drew." Now it feels like a word that's grown cold from being said too quickly. "Hey Grams," short, rushed, like a text message you send because you feel like you should. I live in the same house Henry and I bought in 1968. Small, creaky, full of corners that hold memories like dust. The wallpaper's faded to a color no one can name anymore. Something between yellow and time itself. My living room smells faintly of old wood and lavender, and there's always a thin film of flour on the counter, because I still bake every Sunday, even if no one comes to eat. Every sound here has meaning. The clock ticks like an old heartbeat. The floorboards sigh when I walk across them. The wind whistles through the same crack in the kitchen window that Henry never got around to fixing. I tell myself that's his way of saying hello. My days move in quiet circles. I wake up before the sun because my body doesn't know how to sleep in anymore. I put on the kettle, watch the water shimmer as it boils, and hum songs I don't remember learning. Sometimes, I forget what I was doing midway. I'll open the cupboard and just stand there, looking at the dishes as if they might tell me something I've lost. I keep the TV on low volume most of the day, not because I'm watching it, but because silence is too loud. When you've lived long enough, you start realizing silence has its own voice. It reminds you of everything that's missing. Ethan used to visit every summer when he was little. He'd race around the garden barefoot, chasing butterflies, and pretending the apple tree was a pirate ship. He'd ask me to bake cinnamon rolls, and I'd pretend to protest even though I always had the dough ready before he arrived. I can still see his sticky fingers, the sugar dusted across his cheeks, and that grin, that impossible, bright grin that made me believe nothing could ever change. But children grow, and people forget the hands that held them steady. Somewhere between high school and college, Ethan's voice over the phone became shorter. His texts are less frequent. I understood. Life pulls people away. I told myself it was a natural process. Still, I waited. Birthdays, holidays, even random Thursdays, for that familiar ringtone, that cheerful "Hey, Grams." My daughter, Linda, means well, I suppose. She's always busy. She talks about work, bills, and her aching knees. She forgets that I ache too. Just in quieter places. Sometimes she visits, sometimes she doesn't. When she does, she walks through my house like she's touring a museum, touching the picture frames, frowning at the dust, suggesting I really should move somewhere smaller. But I can't. This house isn't just wood and walls. It's where Henry sang off-key every morning while shaving. It's where Ethan took his first steps. It's where we buried the cat, Daisy, under the maple tree. Every scratch on the table, every dent in the floor has a story that belongs to us. I still keep Henry's old pocket watch on the mantelpiece. It doesn't tick anymore, but I wind it every morning anyway, just to hear that faint click. That watch saw everything. It sat in his vest pocket the day he proposed, on his bedside table the night he passed. It's the only thing that ever felt like time itself could be loved. Some afternoons, I sit by the window and knit small things, socks, scarves, sometimes half-finished sweaters. I don't need them. but my hands need purpose. My fingers tremble now. They don't obey like they used to. But there's comfort in repetition, in watching something slowly take shape again. Sometimes the neighborhood kids walk past. They don't know me, but they wave. I wave back. It's funny how you can feel invisible until someone's eyes meet yours. The days blend together like the colors of sunset, soft, fading, familiar. The mailman still calls me ma'am, though he's seen me every day for 20 years. He leaves envelopes I don't need and catalogs full of things I'll never buy. Once, he said, "You must be lonely in that big old house." I smiled and told him, "I've got company. Memories make fine guests. But memories can be heavy too." Some nights I lie awake and hear Henry's cough echo in the dark, or the sound of Ethan's baby laughter from a different time. The clock ticks through the quiet, and I tell myself to be grateful for breath, for warmth, for having loved so much that losing hurts this deeply. When Ethan stopped visiting, I didn't ask why. I thought maybe I'd said something wrong, or maybe I'd just turned into one of those background people life moves past. I'd see pictures of him online, smiling, surrounded by friends, holding certificates. I'd like the posts quietly. I didn't want to embarrass him with a comment that started with, "Love you, sweet boy." The day I saw his graduation photo, something inside me stilled. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, letting the air grow thick around me. The blue of his gown, the joy in his eyes, they belonged to a world that had forgotten I helped build it. Later that night, I walked to the living room and looked at Henry's picture on the wall. He's smiling in that way. He always did, a little sideways, like he knew a secret. I told him, "He did it, Henry. Our boy made it." My voice cracked halfway through, but he didn't invite me. I could almost hear Henry say, "He'll come back, love. He just doesn't know what time means yet." That word stayed with me, time, because time is what I gave him. Days, years, love measured in moments, and time is what he gave back by forgetting to look back. The next morning, I opened the drawer and took out Henry's watch. The metal was cool against my palm, but familiar, like holding his hand again after so many years. I turned it over and read the tiny engraving on the back. "For every second we have, thank you." I decided then what I needed to do, not out of anger, not out of guilt, but out of love. Because love, when you're old, stops being about holding on. It becomes about letting go, gently, quietly, with grace. I didn't sleep that night. The moonlight spilled through the lace curtains and painted soft silver shapes across the floor. The house made its usual noises, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, the whisper of trees outside, but it all sounded different, like the whole place was holding its breath with me. When you live alone long enough, nights stretch differently. They're not ours. They're memories parading through the dark. I saw Ethan at 5, standing on a chair beside me, trying to stir cookie dough with his tiny hands. I saw Henry reading the newspaper, his glasses slipping down his nose, pretending not to fall asleep. I saw my daughter, Linda, leaving for college, in that blue sweater I knitted her. She never wore it again. Life gives you so much, and then, quietly, it starts taking things back. I remember the first winter after Henry died. The house felt too big, like it had swallowed me whole. I used to set 2 plates at the table without realizing, then stare at the empty chair across from me. There's no manual for widowhood, no steps to follow, no one to tell you how to make 1 cup of tea instead of 2. You just keep doing what you used to until it stops hurting, and then you realize it never really stops. But Ethan, he was my light in those years. He was 6 when Henry passed. I still remember the funeral, the gray sky, the cold air, the way people spoke softly, as if they were afraid to disturb grief. After everyone left, Ethan climbed into my lap and whispered, "Grams, is Grandpa sleeping?" I nodded, because what else could I say to a child who still believed goodbyes were temporary? He said, "Then we'll wake him when it's time for cookies again." Children see the world differently. They don't measure loss the way we do. They measure love in moments. I think that's why I held on to him so tightly, because he reminded me that love, no matter how fragile, can still make life bearable. Years passed in the rhythm of ordinary things. Birthdays, school plays, Sunday dinners. I made sure to be there for everything. I took the bus when my car broke down, baked cupcakes when the bakery was closed, and sat through his piano recitals even when the notes were all wrong. That's what you do when you love someone. You show up. But somewhere along the way, showing up stopped being enough. He got older. I got smaller. When he entered college, I tried not to be the kind of grandmother who called too often. I told myself he needed space, that he was busy, that young people live fast and love quick. But silence has a way of bruising the heart. Each unanswered call felt like a door quietly closing. I used to scroll through his photos, pretending I was there, smiling with his friends, standing in the crowd, clapping from the back. I'd whisper, "You're doing so well, my boy," even though he couldn't hear me. One evening, I tried calling Linda. I wanted to ask about Ethan's graduation date. She answered between errands, her voice hurried, distracted. "Mom, please don't take it personally. It's just a small ceremony. He didn't invite anyone." Okay, but that wasn't true. The pictures told another story, a sea of proud parents, siblings, friends, all gathered for a moment that should have been ours to dot. So I did what I always do when life feels too heavy. I sat by the window and talked to Henry. "Do you think I was a bad mother?" I asked him softly. "Did I raise her wrong? Or maybe I just stayed alive too long?" The house stayed silent, but I imagined him smiling, shaking his head the way he always did when I overthought things. He'd probably say, "You loved too much. That's all." People don't know what to do with that kind of love anymore. That night, I opened my old writing desk, the one Ethan used to doodle on with crayons. Inside was a box of things I'd kept for decades. Yellowed letters, a few photographs, and the pocket watch. The metal gleamed faintly under the lamp. Its glass cracked but still beautiful. I turned it over in my hands and remembered the day Henry gave it to me. It was our 25th anniversary. He wasn't a man of many words, just gestures that meant more than anything spoken. He placed the watch in my palm and said, "You're my time, Ruth. Everything before you was just waiting." I didn't cry then. I smiled and told him, "Then, I guess we've both been right on time." And now, sitting there, decades later, I thought maybe that watch still had work to do. Maybe time could still send a message when words couldn't. So I took out a piece of stationery and began to write. "Dear Ethan, I saw your graduation photo today. You looked so happy, and you should be. I've watched you grow from a tiny boy with chocolate on his chin to a man who's made his family proud. I won't pretend it didn't hurt not being there, but maybe some lessons come in silence. When your grandfather was alive, he used to tell me that time reminds us of who showed up when it mattered. I didn't understand that then. I do now. I'm sending you his watch. It doesn't tick anymore, but maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe it just needs to be held the way love sometimes just needs to be remembered. Wear it when you want to remember that someone out there prays for you every night, even if you forget to call. And when you look at it, I hope you know, I was there for every second that mattered. Love always, Grams. I folded the letter carefully, slipped the watch into a small velvet pouch, and sealed the envelope. My hands shook the entire time. I didn't cry. Not until I wrote the return address. It felt like sending a piece of myself away. But maybe that's what love is, giving pieces away, hoping they find their way back. When I walked to the post office the next morning, the air was sharp and clear. The clerk smiled and asked, "Something special?" I said, "Yes, a reminder." He stamped it, and the package disappeared into the slot with a soft thunk. Just like that, it was out of my hands. The days that followed were quiet, too quiet. I kept expecting the phone to ring, a knock on the door, some sign that he'd received it, but nothing came. Weeks turned into months. I told myself not to expect anything. Love, after all, isn't a transaction, it's an offering. Still, every night before bed, I looked at the spot where the watch used to sit and whispered, "He's got you now. Henry, take care of him." I went on with life, or whatever you call what's left of it, when your world shrinks to a few rooms and memories. I baked pies I didn't eat. I watered plants that didn't need it. I hummed songs to ghosts. But somewhere, deep inside, something had shifted. Writing that letter had given me back a piece of my own dignity. I had loved. I had shown up, and even if no one noticed, that love was still mine. That sometimes, late at night, I'd dream that Ethan knocked on the door, holding the watch, saying, "I didn't know, Grams. I didn't understand," and I'd smile in my sleep, whispering, "You do now." Maybe dreams are how time lets us visit the places we're not invited anymore. It was late autumn when the letter came. Not his, mine. It was a hospital reminder. The kind that politely lists your next appointment like it's talking to a machine, not a person. I folded it up and placed it under the sugar jar. I didn't want to think about doctors, or time, or the body's quiet betrayals. That evening, the sun set too early, like it had somewhere better to be. The days were getting colder. The house creaked differently when winter began settling in. I started keeping the kettle going most of the day, not because I needed tea, but because the sound of boiling water made me feel less alone. Life goes on in small ways when you're waiting for something you don't admit out loud. Weeks passed, no call, no message. Sometimes I wondered if the watch had arrived at all. Maybe the post lost it. Maybe it's sitting in some warehouse, forgotten. Like so many other things that mattered once. I'd imagine Ethan opening it, maybe surprised, maybe confused, and then setting it aside, not understanding yet. But one gray afternoon, something changed. It was raining, a soft, steady drizzle that made the air smell like wet leaves and old promises. I was dozing in my chair when I heard a knock. Not the kind of knock that startles you, the kind that waits, patient, gentle. I pushed myself up, my knees protesting. The hallway felt longer than usual. When I opened the door, the light hit me first, gray sky behind a young man's outline. For a moment, I didn't recognize him. His hair was damp, his jacket darker from the rain. Then I saw it. The chain of the pocket watch glinting faintly against his chest. "Hi, Grams," he said. His voice had changed, deeper, steadier, but still the same softness underneath. For a heartbeat, I couldn't move. My throat tightened, and all I could manage was, "Ethan, you found your way." He smiled, a little shyly. "Took me long enough, didn't it?" I stepped aside to let him in. The air carried the smell of rain, and something else, something like forgiveness. He looked around the house, as if seeing it for the first time, his eyes tracing the framed photographs, the knitting basket, the clock on the wall. "It's smaller than I remember," he said. I chuckled softly. "Or maybe you just grew." We sat at the kitchen table. I poured him tea, though my hands trembled so badly the spoon clinked against the cup. He reached out, steadying it for me. That simple touch nearly broke me. I hadn't realized how much I missed being touched by someone who remembered me. "I got your letter," he said after a long pause. "And the watch." He turned it over in his hand. I didn't understand it at first. I thought it was just a nice gift. He looked up, his eyes glossy. "Then I read your note again. Time reminds us who showed up when it mattered." He swallowed hard. "I wasn't there, Grams. I should have been. I don't know why I thought. I don't know what I was thinking." There it was, the moment I'd both wanted and feared. I could have said 100 things, that he hurt me, that I'd cried for weeks, that I felt forgotten. But instead, I reached across the table and covered his hand with mine. "Ethan," I said quietly, "you showed up now. That's what matters." He shook his head. "You shouldn't forgive me that easily." I smiled, a small, tired smile. "Forgiveness isn't easy. It's about peace. And I've been ready for peace for a long time." He sat there, staring at me like he was seeing not just his grandmother, but every version of her he'd missed. The one who waited by the phone, who baked too many pies, who saved a broken watch because love never truly stops ticking. We talked for hours, about nothing and everything, about his job, his dreams, and the small apartment he shares with friends. I told him stories he'd half forgotten about how he once tried to give a frog a bath, how Henry used to sneak candy into his lunchbox. We laughed, and somewhere between the laughter and the pauses, I felt something mend inside me. When the clock struck 9, he stood up. "I should go," he said softly. My heart sank, but I nodded. "All right." He hesitated at the door, then turned back. "Do you still keep that quilt you made from Grandpa's shirts?" I blinked, surprised. "You remember that?" He smiled. "It used to smell like him. I used to pretend it could talk." I laughed through the tears. "It's still here, folded on the sofa." He walked over, lifted it carefully, and draped it around my shoulders. "Keep it warm for me, okay?" I said, "Always." Before leaving, he leaned down and kissed my forehead, the same spot he used to bump when I'd lift him too fast as a baby. "I'll come back soon," he whispered. And then he was gone, a shadow, fading into the rain. I stood by the window for a long time, watching him walk down the street. The watch glinted once under the streetlight before disappearing into the distance. That's when I realized something beautiful and painful all at once. Love doesn't always come when we want it to, but it always arrives right on time. I turned back to the room, quiet again, except for the steady tick of the old clock. It sounded louder now, more alive. For years, I thought time had stopped for me, but maybe it was just waiting for this moment to start again. It's been 3 months since that rainy afternoon. The days feel softer now, the kind that settled gently instead of slipping away. The house doesn't echo as much. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I've stopped listening for the wrong kind of silence. Ethan visits every Sunday now. He always brings something. Sometimes flowers, sometimes groceries, sometimes just that smile I thought I'd lost forever. He still calls me Grams, but now it sounds like it used to. There's weight in it again. Warmth. Memory. He fixed the kitchen clock last week. I hadn't even realized it had stopped. I'd gotten used to its silence. When it started ticking again, I almost cried. He looked at me, half worried. It's just a clock, Grams. But it wasn't. It was the heartbeat of the house, and somehow, of me too. We don't talk much about the letter or the watch anymore. He wears it every time he visits, tucked under his sleeve, like something sacred. Once, when he thought I wasn't looking, he took it out, wound it gently, and smiled at the faint sound it made. I didn't tell him that it hadn't ticked for years. Maybe it was never broken. Maybe it just needed to be held again. Sometimes we sit on the porch together, sharing slices of apple pie. He tells me about his work, about the city, about how hard it is to make friends who mean something real. I listen, I nod, and sometimes I tell him small things about his grandfather's laugh, about the time we got caught in the rain and danced instead of running. He always says, "You make it sound so simple, Grams." And I tell him, we just didn't know it. He's grown into a man now. Not just taller, but steadier. He doesn't rush his words anymore. Sometimes he just sits beside me in silence, and that's enough. You learn, at my age, that love doesn't need to fill the air. It just needs to be there. The other day, he asked me something that made my heart pause. "Grams," he said, "when you sent me that watch, were you saying goodbye?" I looked at him for a moment before answering. The sunlight was falling across his face just the way it used to when he was a boy, warm and soft. "No," I said. "I was saying, remember." He nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. "Then I promise, I will." That night, after he left, I sat by the window again. The moon was bright, and the world felt quiet in the best kind of way. I thought about Henry, how he used to tell me that time doesn't take love away. It just changes how it's held. And I realized something. We spend so much of life chasing moments, trying to make them last, when really, all we ever need is for one to stay. Just one, the kind that lives in someone else's heart when you're gone. For me, that moment is Ethan wearing the watch. For him, maybe it's the smell of cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings, or the sound of my humming when I forgot anyone was listening. That's how love lives on, quietly, endlessly, without asking to be noticed. I don't know how many more seasons I'll get. The doctors say I'm fine for my age, whatever that means. I just smile and tell them I've already lived 1,000 years in memories. Sometimes, when the house is very still, I talk to Henry. Not out loud, not always, just softly, in that place between thoughts and prayers. "I did what you said, Henry," I whisper. He came back. Time brought him home. And I swear, sometimes, when the wind passes through the window crack, I hear his laugh, that gentle, teasing chuckle that always made me roll my eyes. Maybe it's just the wind, or maybe love, like time, never really ends. It just changes rooms. Ethan stayed late last Sunday. We watched the sunset from the porch. The sky turned the color of apricots and fading gold, the kind Henry used to call forever light. Ethan said, "Grams, when I have kids someday, I'm going to tell them about you, about how you never stopped showing up." I smiled, eyes stinging. "Then tell them that's what family means, my boy. Showing up even when no one claps for you." He nodded, silent, thoughtful. Then he pulled out his phone and showed me the graduation photo again. "I used to think this was the proudest day of my life," he said, "but now I think it's this, sitting here with you." I laughed softly. "Careful, I might start believing I'm special." "You are," he said simply. "You always were. I just forgot for a while." And that's when I realized I didn't need an apology. I didn't need a ceremony or a speech or even an invitation. I just needed to know that love had found its way home. Later, after he left, I walked through the quiet rooms and turned off the lights one by one. In the soft dark, I could feel the heartbeat of the house again. Slow, steady, alive. I stopped in front of the mantel where the watch used to sit and smiled. Time, I thought, isn't cruel. It's just honest. It takes, yes, but it gives back to in its own mysterious way. And tonight, it had given me peace. I sat back in my chair, pulled the quilt around me, and let the ticking clock fill the silence. For the first time in years, it didn't sound lonely. It sounded full, like every tick was saying, "You did enough. You loved enough. You were enough. My eyes grew heavy, and before sleep took me, I whispered, maybe to Henry, maybe to the world. I showed up when it mattered.